I'm Katie Cowan, and this is the Creative Boom Podcast. This week's guest is Lyndsay McLaren, Account Director at All Conditions Media and founder of Neighbourhood Skate Club. Lyndsay has spent the past decade in marketing and creative communications for action sports, outdoors, fashion and lifestyle brands such as Patagonia, GoPro, Adidas, Arc'teryx, Yeti and many more. Originally from Scotland, she graduated in corporate communication from Robert Gordon University in 2008, but then went to the States to study performing arts at the University of Florida, where she also discovered a passion for skateboarding. That's where she stayed for a while, securing her first step on the career ladder at Bern Helmets in Boston, before returning to the UK in 2014 to further her career in the outdoor and action sports world. It's been a whirlwind ever since. She spent 5 or 6 years in London, where she continued her love of skating and also launched Neighbourhood Skate Club, which aims to create more opportunities for women in the UK to skate, connect and community build. It's also designed to address issues such as consent, street harassment, domestic violence, sexual harassment, catcalling and male violence against women, while offering support to survivors and victims. Today, Lyndsay's based in Leeds after the pandemic forced her to take stock and realised she needed to leave the capital. It's where she continues to run the club and work for All Conditions Media, immersing herself in the production and marketing world of extreme and outdoor sports. Her new project and short film, A Land for Everyone, is something she's also recently been involved with. It aims to show skateboarding in a new light while breaking down some of the barriers that exist within the sport, and in fact, action sports and the outdoor industry in general. With all this in mind, I sat down with Lyndsay to discuss all of these issues and all of her adventures so far, and discover why, despite everything she's been through, she's still hopeful for the future. Well, thanks, Lyndsay, for coming today. There is so much to cover. I really don't know how we're going to start this conversation, but for our listeners, I will introduce you as somebody who has founded their own neighbourhood skate club, and then we can sort of talk about why you've set that up. I think that would be a really good way to open up the conversation, so to speak.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I started Neighbourhood Skate Club coming out of the lockdown. It was something that happened quite organically, really, in the sense that I didn't set out on a mission to start a community or to start a small business or to start anything like that. I was out in the skate park myself at my usual spot, which at the time was Victoria Park in East London. And the more that I was out skating, the more I would see new beginners, much more than I had saw previously during or like pre-lockdown.
Is this other women and girls or?
Yeah, predominantly. Yeah. So definitely there were more people in the park. Like, you know, everyone was just kind of excited to be back outside and trying something new. And I guess felt quite inspired to do so after being stuck inside for such a long time. But predominantly when I would go out to skate, the more I was kind of like out there skating myself, the more I would see younger girls, other women learning to skate. And it became really clear to me quite early on in that journey that they all had a couple of things in common. And the main thing was that they were non-males learning to skate. And the other thing was that they, you know, were clearly of beginner level. Like it was definitely like new territory for
a few sore knees and bottoms.
Yeah. But the thing that was most common was this kind of like discomfort that I was witnessing, not just in the sense that they were trying something new, but they were clearly vulnerable in this space. And it was more than just this kind of idea of like, oh, you know, we're out here trying something new. It was definitely this, you know, obvious kind of imposter syndrome. People that were kind of wary of who they would lock eyes with. And you can just read people's body language, can't you? And I think for me, the reason I was able to tell that is because it was so familiar. It was something that I had been through and still sometimes do go through. And so Neighbourhood kind of grew from there. I recognized that as someone who was comfortable on my skateboard in Victoria Park in that area, I was in a position where, I could sense that I was someone who was actually causing discomfort just purely by being in the same area as them, and someone who was a bit more competent on the board. And so I was like, okay, I felt like a responsibility to try and put people at ease in some way, because I recognize how scary it can be and vulnerable you can feel when you're doing something new.
Exactly. But there's also, I suppose, it's traditionally been very much a male-dominated extreme sport, much like many of the extreme sports, I suppose, if I'm all right saying that. Yeah,
you're definitely not wrong there. So I think I've been skateboarding for maybe 12 or 13 years now, and it's still very male-dominated. And although things are changing and there are more people riding skateboards now than ever before who don't identify as a man, there is still so much work we can do to try and make that space more inclusive and welcoming and safe for everyone. So I kind of felt that heavily. And like I said, I could read people and read that they were feeling a bit uncomfortable. And so I just started going up to people in as friendly a way as I could do to say hi. And, if it was someone who I thought maybe needed like a pointer or two, I would try and do so in a way that, didn't put them off or feel intimidating towards them. And just started conversation really. And from there, I, would invite people. I started a small group chat,
nice.
Or a WhatsApp group, should I say, and would add people into this group. And around the same time, I was also, inspired to try and help other people who had voiced an interest in the past to me of like, oh, I wish I could do that, but there's no way I could. And I would always be like, yes, you can. Like, please just come out with me and I'll show you how to get on and off the board. And I promise it's not as hard as it looks. So off the side of that, I was also doing these kind of one-to-one lessons for friends and family or people who I had worked with in the past. And that was slowly growing at the same time as I was kind of out there in the park being like, hey, like, you're doing great. Like, try this or try that. And trying to do so in a way that, again, didn't make people feel more uncomfortable. I try and be like really aware of how I approached those situations to ensure that people felt comfortable with me coming up to them, a stranger in the park. So just being aware of that was important to me. But eventually all of that grew, and the lesson side of things was growing as well. And I thought...
People hired you to do lessons.
It got to that stage, which was, talk about imposter syndrome that these people were experiencing. I then was like, oh God, like, should I be doing this? But I was trying to teach skateboarding in a way that I hadn't seen before. Mm-hmm. I was making it less about the trick side of skateboarding and more about this connection to yourself and your body, and slowing the whole thing down, taking away the pressure that comes with this idea that to be a skater, you have to, tick the boxes of all these tricks that you can do. I just made it more about being able to push and stay on the board and do so in a way that feels really good, feels comfortable, and feels empowering. And when you take away the pressure and you slow everything down, like I would almost tell some of the people that I was teaching, like, let's just imagine we're going in slow motion, because when you're trying something new and you feel vulnerable, there is this kind of rush that you have that you want to kind of fly through it. And obviously when you're on a plank of wood with 4 wheels, if you rush that, you're going to go flying. So
Ouch.
it was about kind of slowing it down for people and feeling that sense of connection to where their weight was in their body and how they could kind of use that to find their way on a skateboard. And once people realized that they could do it too, this world that they had thought like was not for them at all, when they realized that skateboarding was something that they could do, that being able to be a part of seeing what that did to them was hugely rewarding, not just for that person, but selfishly also for me, because I was helping them I was facilitating something that they didn't ever think they could, do. And that was really nice to be able to do.
Sounds great. But I think one of the things that you then found came out of starting this club, which I don't know if it was expected or not, was that you also then became a kind of, non-kind of deliberate counsellor. Because the conversations would start, because obviously setting something up like this is a way for women and girls to feel like they're in a safe space, that they can learn something that otherwise, has, like you say, been quite traditionally a male sport. But then you sort of, I suppose, around that periphery, talk about a lot of the things that we've all gone through, and it can probably get quite intimate and quite heavy quite quickly, I would imagine.
It definitely did. And there was something, again, that was, I just connected with people. And that is why I think I was so hungry for it, especially when I was first getting started, because I was having this human connection with other women, especially, that I had been lacking throughout the whole of lockdown. And then further to that, like my whole career as someone who works in the kind of outdoor action sports, skateboarding, snowboarding world, that's outside of the work I do with Neighbourhood. So to be able to finally have that connection with other women in this space and within this kind of world that I love so much was really, gratifying and special for me. But yeah, it got heavy at times because, we'd be there and we'd be going through the steps of how to skate and how to feel comfortable on the board. And part of feeling comfortable on the board is also feeling or learning, how to be okay with that, going to that space within that vulnerable place within yourself, because I wasn't teaching skating away from the prying eyes of others. We were right bang in the middle of Victoria Park in spring, summer 2021. There were always runners. There were people out having coffee. There were other skaters. There were cyclists. The park was busy. And part of the reason that I, was teaching there was because of its proximity to where I lived and my comfort within that park, but also because it's the perfect place to learn to skate. For people that don't know, Victoria Park has a skate park with a bowl that has the reason people go there specifically is obviously to skate. And I was actually teaching outside of the skate park, just in the general park. And that was important to me because, again, I wanted to offer something that didn't exist already. And a lot of the lessons I would see would be in the skate park. And I thought to myself, well, what about all of the people who don't want to learn within the skate park? And that can also be quite scary. So, but to go back to your point, when we'd be learning to skate, we would talk about the feeling of people watching you, because especially when it's two women on skateboards who are clearly having a lesson or learning something, that can be quite inviting for a lot of people to stare or to comment. And the more practice I became in doing the lessons, the more I realized how often that was happening. And sometimes it was really harmless. Sometimes, it was people smiling and being like, oh, cool. They're look at that. They're doing a lesson. And other times it was not that at all. And it was, there were uninvited comments from passersby, from male cyclists, from runners, from literally just anyone. Well, I say anyone, it was men.
Yeah.
And so there was a common theme there where I'd have to also kind of say to the girls that I was teaching, okay, let's talk about how we deal with that. Because if you're out here skating by yourself, that's going to happen to you as well. Street harassment is a thing. Catcalling is a thing. And when you have a skateboard under your feet or under your arm, even if you're just trying to walk from A to B with it, I can speak from my own personal experience that invites a lot of comments from people, and they're not often pleasant and they do not feel good. And so we'd speak about that, and that would often lead to other conversations about experiences that we have as women. And whilst, again, I actually at times found that quite therapeutic because of the things I have gone through, but also that was quite heavy. And so I would get home from doing 2 or 3 lessons that night and, relax on the sofa and have like just this big deep breath of like, oh my God, wow. But at the same time, again, like the connections that I was making with these other women felt really special. And, they had progressed so much in just an hour. Like most of the people I was teaching would literally learn to skate in an hour. They would start the lesson as someone who'd never been on a skateboard before. And at the end of the hour would be pushing around and be feeling really, really good. And so although we were having this like deep and meaningful conversation in amongst all of that, like they were also physically doing something that they didn't think they could do. And so the whole experience, was quite a trip for people and quite a trip for me to be doing those back to back, Yeah,
I bet it was, a lot to take on.
It was, but I loved it. I like I said, it was something that I felt so passionate about. And, I was feeling at that time quite uninspired in my job at that time, my kind of day job, if you will. And so finding this kind of like spark that was igniting so much within me creatively and, personally, it was invigorating. And I felt this feeling to skating that I hadn't felt before, despite being a skater for as long as I have been.
Yeah.
So it was really special and really cool. And I just kind of kept following that as much as I could.
It's really empowering. I remember during, when we were allowed to go out, I remember buying a basketball and just walking to the park with a basketball. And then I just remember getting to the basketball hoop because I'd always go on walks and I'd always look at the basketball court, which was usually empty, to be fair. And I was always like, oh, I really miss basketball. I want to play basketball. And something I think happened to a lot of us during the pandemic where we were like, why are we not doing these things? But I got there with my basketball and sort of did this kind of look to the left, look to the right. Oh, is anyone going to think I'm an idiot because I'm a 40-something woman who's got a basketball? I'm here on my own. I feel really silly. But then I was like, oh, for God's sake. And then I started just shooting hoops. And before I knew it, some other lads came across, and it was lads. There were no other girls, and we got chatting, and we were sharing tips, and that was just so nice. And then I kept going back like every other day.
Yeah.
So it was empowering. I think we just kind of we tell ourselves that we are not welcome in certain spaces.
Totally. And that's imposter syndrome. That's something that, it's applicable in basketball. It's applicable in skateboarding. It's applicable in everyday life. And it's something that so many of us feel so often and don't often really know what those feelings are. And we try and dismiss them. But it's real. And I think, especially in sports and in male-dominated sports and spaces, as women, it can feel really intimidating to step into those spaces or to step into that world and try and be a part of it, because you're suddenly flooded with these feelings of like, why am I even doing this? Like, this isn't for me. I'm not good enough. And that can be really overwhelming and can be enough to just put people right off. They attempt it and then they're like, hell no, that is not for me. Because, and with skateboarding specifically, if that feeling of imposter syndrome is then also coupled with, the fear of falling or the fear of like, oh God, this is something where I could hurt myself, then that can be enough for people to just never want to do it again. And so if I could help create a safe space for people to overcome those feelings of imposter syndrome, but also not fall in this instance of a skateboard, then again, that was exciting for me because I was helping create a space for someone to do something that would ultimately make them feel good. And as a result, was really therapeutic for me as well.
It's really sad that we have to grow up into this world, isn't it? Because I remember being a kid, 5 or 6, 7, just didn't really sort of acknowledge that there was a difference between boys and girls. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to try that. I'm going to get that racing bike. I'm going to get that Scale Extric set. I'm going to have, what else did I have? I had a skateboard when I was,
Excellent.
I'm trying to remember how old I was. I was young.
Yeah.
And I remember it was so cool. It was black and it had like fluorescent pink, fluorescent yellow and fluorescent green. And I loved it with all my heart and would often be out in the cul-de-sac playing on it, not without a care in the world.
Sure.
And then you sort of grow up and you enter the world and we've obviously had all these sort of different voices, subconscious, whatever, just, we just eventually get ruined, don't we? If that's a good way to put it. And then we think we're not welcome. And whether that's on, a skateboard park or whether it's on, whether it's in a design agency or at a festival, a design conference,
Sure.
it's just, I don't belong here. And it's where do those voices come from and how can we sort of overcome them and give ourselves the confidence to say, well, actually, no, I do deserve a place here and I'm going to do it.
Yeah, well, I hear you. And I think that like the media and society have a lot to answer for in that sense because, representation matters. So if you don't see somebody else doing something, if you don't see somebody who looks like you doing something, whether that's in real life or in the media or at a conference, speaking on a panel, whatever it might be, then you don't imagine that it's as easy or as possible for you to do something. So, for me growing up in Scotland, in a small seaside town, I didn't see anybody that looked like me riding a skateboard. And I honestly didn't even consider that it was something I could do. Like it wasn't even something I aspired to do because it didn't even cross my mind that was for me. Mm-hmm. And so, I actually didn't start skateboarding until I was in my early 20s when I lived in a different country. And it's funny because, I often people assume that to skate, you must have started when you were like a kid or a teenager, and that wasn't the case for me. And so that's what I was telling a lot of the people who had expressed an interest in doing skate lessons with me through Neighbourhood is like, they'd be like, oh, but I'm too old. Like, there's no point in me even trying. And to kind of be able to say like, yeah, it doesn't matter. Like you still have this body, like, and you have this aspiration to try. So let's try it and let's do it. Like, leave your inhibitions leave your ego, like leave all that to the side and step into the space. And the worst that can happen is that you don't get on with it, but at least you've tried it. But yeah, for me, I experienced that when I was learning to skate, plagued with like feelings of like, what the hell am I doing? And why am I doing this? And that was like, also, I didn't have anybody teaching me or helping me. So that was alongside all the cuts and bruises that I was getting from falling off the skateboard, as well as the imposter syndrome and the insane street harassment that I was experiencing at the time when I was learning to skate. I was living in Miami at the time. I was going to university in Miami, and the skateboard was a means for me to get around. That was my thought process when I started skateboarding. It was either a bike or a skateboard. And I thought, it was the first time I'd seen like other girls and other women on skateboards, because growing up in Scotland, like I said, I didn't see that. Moved to Miami and, saw all these like cool girls riding skateboards. And I was like, oh, I want to do that. So chose to buy a board over a bike and kind of forced myself to learn and taught myself and did a lot of like YouTube, Instagram, I think. I don't even know if Instagram was around at the time, maybe just early days. So yeah, I was feeling the imposter syndrome, but then I was also like dealing with the cuts and bruises, but I didn't care. Like I wasn't hurting myself to the point where, it was causing me severe injury. It was like warrior wounds. I was like, I'm really doing the damn thing. Like, here I am. Like,
You're 6 years old again.
I felt really, really empowered. And also because I didn't have a car when I was living in Miami, suddenly I was getting from point A to point B faster. And I also thought, well, like worst case scenario, I can get away from people quickly if I need to. And it's, actually, I almost like would boast about that at the time when people would ask me like why I was learning to skate or what I was doing. I'm like, well, I can get from, away from people faster. I live in downtown Miami. People, ha, 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 very funny. And like the harsh reality now that I understand more so and can relate to more so, you know, a decade or so on, is that it's really devastating that that was a consideration for me, and that, you know, I needed a reason to get away fast if came into circumstances that I felt were dangerous for me.
Well, it's been normalised, hasn't it? It took Sarah Everard for me to kind of sit there and talk with other girls, other friends, and say, gosh, yeah, I think it was my sister-in-law, actually. She said to me, oh, I hate this time of year because winter means us women have shorter days. And I was like, what? I don't, and I think it's weird. I don't know whether it's my generation, whether younger women are just more aware of these things than I was at their age. But it's been an awakening recently for me just to sort of sit there and go, oh my God, yeah, when I look back, I used to dress like a boy deliberately when I was at university, and I used to go and have, you know, drinks around friends and had to walk back to my house, and I used to put my hood up and swagger like a boy, and I'd have my keys in between my fingers, and I'd be smoking just to sort of like look sort of, you know, I'd have people crossing the road from me.
Oh,
you know, I'd be like, you know, really trying to look intimidating, and I think my height helped. But yeah, and then you think of all the things that you've had to sort of get away from.
Yeah.
But we don't really, I don't know what I'm trying to say. It's like, it's been normalized. Why are we not like screaming from the rooftops, you know, enough?
Yeah, this was another big part of what inspired me to start doing more with the platform I was building with Neighbourhood, is because I recognized how vulnerable we were as women in the first place, but also riding skateboards. Like I said, like it was getting to a point where I couldn't leave my flat in East London with my skateboard without something being said or happening to me. And
what were the kind of things people were saying?
I've had some really vulgar statements shouted at me from, you know, men in the man in a van can sometimes get a bad rep, but they're, you know, it was often men in vans driving past shouting something out of a van window or a car window. But what was more alarming for me was what was happening to me in the park, where it was a much closer proximity. Mm-hmm. It wasn't just getting catcalled or getting things shouted at me. I would get groped. I was followed home. I would have men like lingering, disrupting my lessons because they wanted to comment or stare or have something to say. I was even teaching a young girl once, and that young girl was, you know, maybe 12, and just was dealing with a man with his hands down his pants on a park bench nearby. Gosh. And we had, it's just horrible.
We've all experienced it though, haven't we?
The unfortunate thing is, this is what happened to me, is the more I would talk to women about this, you know, the more I would realize that this wasn't just happening to me. But my experiences were happening so frequently that I decided, like, I couldn't not speak up about it because it was happening so frequently. And I was also learning from experiences how to safely deal with certain situations. And so again, because I was, you know, almost inviting more women to come on board and to start skating, I felt also like it was a necessary part of that conversation to talk about these things and say, hey, like, when someone does this, like, this is how I often deal with it. And this is how I can, you know, advise, like, obviously everybody do what feels safe and good in that situation. And I'm in no means an expert, but, you know, by sharing experiences and sharing things that happened, it was supporting others and myself in a way that, you know, it felt like there were ways to kind of help fight this and help tackle what was going on. But I started speaking out a bit more through the Neighbourhood platform and through my own personal platform. And kind of, you know, although Neighbourhood is about skateboarding and is centered around that world, you know, also using it as a a way to help support people who are going through similar experiences, whether that be street harassment or sexual harassment in the workplace, all the way to, rape.
Yeah.
We would talk about that, and we would talk about circumstances that we have all been through as women and connecting on that level, but through skateboarding. And that was something that I had never had before as a skater. And again, like I said, it wasn't about how good you were on a skateboard. It was just about sharing space with people who you could relate to, who had gone through similar things, who had similar things to talk about. And again, just trying to create a space that feels safe, welcoming, and inclusive for people who don't identify as men within skateboarding, because there's a lot of us. And by coming together, we're a lot more powerful and strong to initiate change if we do it from the inside, and to try and kind of be a force in that sense for ourselves and for each other.
And it's only, of course, some men, not all men. But then I think one of the big problems is that some men don't know how to sort of deal with it if they see it. If they see it happening, sometimes they can just sort of chuckle and laugh along, can't they? Because they don't know how to respond. So it's like, how do we sort of get men to understand that by intervening, they're not, what do they call it? White knighting. Actually, sometimes it would be appreciated if you did sort of speak up and say something that's not, especially if a woman's on her own. I remember I was on a train and this very drunk man came up to me and sat next to me, and he was being really creepy and awful. And I was being really kind of kind and gentle and jovial and laughing along with him. But you and I both know that's because, if I'd have told him to F off.
You wanted to stay safe.
I wanted to stay safe. He's drunk. I don't know who this person is. I'm not sure whether you've had this experience yourself, but I've been in an abusive relationship. So I know how to handle somebody who is potentially going to go very nasty. So you just sit there and you say, oh, yes, that's very kind of you to tell me that I'm very attractive and what have you. I mean, you were saying some pretty awful things. But the thing that was worse, because I dealt with him very professionally, is that the right word? I dealt with him very calmly and managed to get rid of him, and his mate came and found him anyway, and off he went. And to be fair, I think for the most part, in hindsight, he was probably quite harmless, just very, very drunk, fine, whatever. But the worst part was that there were 4 sober, grown men of varying ages sat in that same small carriage on the train that did nothing. So I stood up. I was so angry. I stood up and said, thank you so much for coming to my rescue then. I really appreciate you just watching a vulnerable woman being hassled by a drunk man. Next time you see it happen, can you please stand up and do something, even if it means that the woman tells you to F off and that she can look after herself, because you don't know what that woman's been through or what's happening. And yeah, none of us like a fuss, but if you see something like that happening, I mean, for goodness sake, do something. And then I sat down, I was shaking with rage. None of them said anything.
I can really relate to that. And I think that whilst I like to think like that I know how to handle myself in situations that feel uncomfortable. And, unfortunately, that's because of experiences like yourself. I feel like I have a bit of understanding and certainly experience of dealing with men, whether that is a drunk person on the train or, like yourself, or whether it's a person in the park who's hollering at me or following me. It does get to a point where support is appreciated. And how far does it have to go before somebody will step in to support you as someone who's clearly being harassed or who's clearly not comfortable? And I've spoken to a lot of guy friends as well who have spoken to me about this or asked me, they've seen what I've written or posted about on the Neighbourhood page or have spoken about on my own channels, and they've asked me about it, or on the other side as well of like, what they don't want to be considered a mansplainer if they go up to somebody in the skate park and offer some tips. And, I have spoken at great length with them about what that means and how you have to kind of read the situation. And, human decency comes into play about how you deal with certain situations. And, again, it's about leaving your ego at home sometimes when it comes to human interaction.
Yeah.
But when it comes down to safety, come on, step in, support.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter who you are. Like, obviously, you're not asking other people to put themselves into a dangerous situation, but as human beings, we need to stand up and support each other. And that is why allyship is important. That is why an understanding of like basic right and wrong comes into play. And again, it's unfortunate, but I can relate to your story because so many people have gone through similar situations. And
men as well, by the way.
Yeah, all of us.
All of us. And it's like, there might be those men on the carriage might have been in an abusive relationship with a woman, I've known of that to happen with a few of my friends. So it's only natural that we want to avoid conflict and we find those situations uncomfortable. It happens in other scenarios on trains where racism is at play and, nobody speaks up. What's that all about?
I think it can sometimes come from a place of discomfort, but if you are feeling discomfort as somebody who is hearing or witnessing something, then just take a second to think how the person on the receiving end of that must feel. And again, it comes back into this idea of what I was saying about community and being like, strength in numbers, and that you can do so much more as a group of people or as another, like than one person can for themselves. So you telling this man to kindly leave you alone, like it worked for you in that instance. But it doesn't often work like that for everyone. And again, how far does it have to go before other people make it their problem? And people need to make it their problem. And again,
there's ways to handle it,
Yeah.
without sort of putting yourself in danger. So a good example, I'm quite proud of myself and this is what I did, but there was this young lad, he was probably about, I'd say 12, and he was ever so sweet and he was just sat on his own on the Manchester tram, and I was sat opposite by myself. And then this very kind of angry, drunk gentleman got on and for no reason whatsoever just started shouting at this young lad, because this young lad looked at him and he started absolutely, scaring the hell out of him, really shouting at him. So I just looked at this young lad and the young lad looked at me and he burst out crying because he was like, what's going on? And I just went, come on, let's go and sit down on the other side of the carriage. And we just very calmly got up. This poor lad just immediately leapt up and we both just calmly walked down. This guy carried on shouting at both of us. And we just went all the way down as far as we possibly could. And I just sat with him and said, don't worry about it. These people, and they're not in a very good place. They're not very well. Don't take it personally. You didn't do anything wrong. And then this really nice guy who was nearby said, what's the matter, love? What's happened? Like a local Manchester guy. And I told him, I said, but let's not make a fuss. And so that was nice. That was kind of an unusual moment. But I was really shaking, really the adrenaline was going through me. I was so scared.
I think it comes back to, again, the power of human connection. And I have been in situations myself where something has happened to me where I've felt really upset, really vulnerable. I may have handled the situation, but if somebody just comes over and can offer you some kind of comfort, or even just by standing there or acknowledging that what happened, because I am someone where, bad things have happened to me and then I'm just second guessing myself for the next 2 weeks.
Yeah. Did you do something wrong? Were you wearing a skimpy outfit? Or
sure.
All this kind of absurd.
Just so used to placing the blame on myself. So when somebody does kind of come over and show a sense of, compassion or just acknowledgement that that happened, or that that wasn't fair, or like I saw that whole thing go down, by the way, anything.
Yes.
You just kind of go, okay, great. So I didn't just imagine that.
Yeah.
Because it really felt like that. I imagined that because it was so unreal. And when I was living and skating in East London, you know, when I was just getting started with Neighbourhood, that was so frequent for me that in amongst working a full-time job while starting this community initiative, which was physically and emotionally demanding, and taking care of my puppy and everything else, like I was also dealing with, you know, this kind of sense of understanding that all of the side effects of what was happening by just simply showing up to do stuff, and you know, coming out of that and going, geez, like that's really heavy, or, you know, I'll just take a minute to acknowledge what just happened to me. And therapy was really helpful for me to be able to kind of process some of those things, because I would have just otherwise blanked them out and have treated it as something that was like not there to be dealt with because it was too difficult to deal with. But by kind of acknowledging that these things do happen and that these things were happening to me, it really helped me process it and then be a better version of myself, both for myself and for everybody else around me, whether that be my partner or my family or my puppy or all of the neighborhood girls. And so like self-care became something that I had to actively prioritize in order to kind of be the best version of myself, because I was relying on myself as much as other people were relying on me. And that was something I had never been used to. Self-care wasn't something I'd ever prioritized until these past couple of years, where I've had to say, okay, I got to take care of myself.
It's very important. I mean, this is the amazing thing about counseling. It ends up like making you realize so many things that you've kind of been doing wrong. Not that that anybody sat there with a scorecard, but like, oh, right, okay, so that's why I've been like this. And it's just liberating.
Yeah, it helps you process things. For me, it was about understanding things that had happened in my past, in my career, that had greatly affected and influenced who I am now, and understanding, you know, behaviors or things that I was doing, or that the people I was surrounding myself with, or, you know, various different things that helped me understand why I was making certain choices and how to process all of that, but then also deal with things in a way that worked for me, and how to continue to put myself first in those situations, to again show up in a way that was okay for me.
Yeah, I learned that. And this is the best thing I got out of it. I learned that if other people couldn't possibly know what hell I had been through or was going through, then how could I hold other people to such high expectations too? And so when you kind of like have that amazing realization, you just let things go. You don't take them personally. And you also sort of, I don't know whether it's necessarily a female thing where we're kind of brought up to be, or whether it's kind of like ingrained in us, you know, this nurturing, look after everybody else first before we look after ourselves. But it's that kind of realization that actually it's not my job to make you like me, or it's not my job to make you feel, you know, comfortable for whatever reason. If an email isn't answered, that's fine. You're allowed to sort of take a couple of days to reply. If you, if somebody keeps asking for a favor and you say no, that's okay.
Yeah.
But I think that as women, we're brought up to sort of people please.
Yeah. I felt like I've done a lot of people pleasing in my years. I think some of that comes from being bullied from primary school through secondary school, and never really feeling accepted or like I fit in. And so kind of almost going out of my way to try and do what I needed to do to get people to like me or to make me feel accepted. And, you know, that was passed into relationships as well that I had then in my early 20s, where I was again just like, putting other people first, regardless of what kind of way they were treating me. And it's shocking to say, but it's only been in more recent years that I have been able to kind of have the confidence within myself to, have a kind of no assholes policy and apply that apply that to all areas of my life. Like if I am, not feeling good and I don't have the energy around me that is, putting myself and my creative self as well, if it's to do with the workplace first, then, it will take, it's given me a point of perspective to step back and go, is this for me? Do I need this? And do I want this? And, we are human beings and we can't be expected to get on with everyone, and everyone has different ways of working, and that's okay. But I have stopped second guessing myself as much now, especially through things that have happened to me in the workplace and in my personal life, in relationships, where I'm just not about that anymore. I trust my judgment. I trust that my experiences are real. And, starting Neighbourhood and creating this place and space where I have felt so passionate about what I do. And it's given me practice to really, really have ownership of everything, creatively. And again, just like operating things how I would want to operate it. I've gone, oh, okay, right. Why is it taking me, despite the fact I am where I am in my career, why is it taking me to do something outside of work to be able to go, oh, okay, like I'm okay, I can do this. And, now I try and bring that same confidence and experience to my projects that I work on at work, to be able to kind of, not second guess myself, or if I feel strong about something, to be that voice and to stand up for it. And again, working in the world that I work in, sometimes that can feel challenging because as women in the outdoors and action sports space, we're not always believed to be the experts. And so
that's another massive problem.
I've always felt like I've had to prove myself. Thankfully now the agency that I work with are brilliant, and, it doesn't actually feel so male dominated.
All Conditions Media, is this?
All Conditions Media, yep. So I work there full time, and we are kind of creative agency that do everything from PR, comms and production to content, all sorts.
Oh, I'm so jealous. Sounds great.
I feel like I finally found my place, and the people are a big part of that. The projects are a big part of that. But I think I also found it at the right time for me, in that I'm able to approach the work that I do now differently, and having the variety of different creative jobs. I'm working fully remotely in that space really helps too. But I feel like I can comfortably juggle everything that I have on, and I'm empowered to do so through the people that run our agency, recognizing kind of the work that I'm passionate about that, sits outside my job description at ACM. And I didn't have that previously. I didn't have that same kind of, I didn't feel like I had people championing me in previous roles.
Perhaps patting on the head and telling you where you're going wrong and how you can do better. I just
felt like people did it. When I started Neighbourhood, it felt like I had to prove why this was needed or necessary, which wasn't what it was all about. And
people get offended, don't they?
Well, at that time I was working with core skate brands and I was surrounded by people that were in that core scene. And some of those people, by the way, are brilliant. However, at that time, I certainly I wasn't feeling the support, and I also didn't have the creative spark that I was searching for within the workplace. So to be able to kind of step outside of that. And, I have to say as well, it was at a time where COVID was kicking off. So of course there were going to be changes in the workplace. But, long story short, it wasn't working out for me. It wasn't giving me what I needed. So to kind of step outside of that and work on big projects and kind of still be empowered to do and to care about the things that I care about outside of work. And also sometimes to mesh the two together has been quite a journey. And I feel like actually the work that I do with Neighbourhood has allowed me to approach some of the projects I work on at ACM from a more experienced place. A lot of the projects I work on are community focused, in line with action sports and the outdoors. So again, like to be able to bring those two worlds together from personal and professional experience, it makes it feel like it's not a job, even though obviously there's a job to be done. Yeah. And I feel like it's taken a lot of work to get there, not just from a point of like, doing work and progressing career-wise, but I mean, I'm talking more personally, to be in the headspace where I can do all of that and still be okay. It's really important.
You found yourself.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm 35. Like I said, I've been skating for 12 or 13 years and I've been working in the creative field and in marketing specifically for outdoor and action sports brands for the same length of time. But it's mad to me that it's only been in the last few years that I felt comfortable enough to call myself a skater, to talk about my expertise and abilities within my creative field and within my kind of professional role has only been recent, despite the experience that I have and the variety of work that I've done. Again, that's imposter syndrome. So learning to overcome that and to, how to practice and deal with anxiety and comparison to others and always feeling like you're not good enough.
Oh, just get rid of Instagram. That solves everything.
I found through having the Neighbourhood Instagram page and using Instagram differently has by changing my approach to how I use social media has also been helpful by not scrolling and by following people that make me feel good and other platforms.
Deleting ones who don't.
Yeah, and that's okay. And I think I think that there's this idea that we have to be or we should be friends with certain people, follow all of these people, like
whether in real life or online.
You just got to do what feels good for you and get ready to kind of flush the rest out. And again, it goes back to self-care and putting yourself first. And that's important.
Do you know, it's so interesting. I don't know if you've had this impression as well, but I feel like there are a lot of us who have gone on this journey in the last couple of years that a lot of my female friends are saying, I've found that confidence I never had before. And they're varying in ages from the early 30s to the sort of, in some cases in the mid 50s. I've never had that. I never felt like I could give myself the ability to just say, I'm proud of myself. Of everything they might have achieved. I've certainly gone on that journey in the last couple of years. Never allowed myself to say, my God, you've done all right, kid. I'm really proud of you. I feel like we've all kind of just had time to really reflect and, without being cheesy, fall in love with who we are. with removing all that time, wasted time and energy on worrying about what other people think, whether we belong in these spaces that, to be fair, are not very welcoming in many cases.
Yeah.
And all that wasted energy on, oh God, am I allowed to do this? Should I be here? Should I do that? Oh, bollocks. It's just fantastic to finally be in this space. And I feel like you're on a very similar level where I'm like, screw the world. I'm happy. I think I'm great. And if you don't agree, I don't take that personally because, as I said before, it's not my job to make the world like me. I just want to like who I am, carry on doing what I love doing, and be proud of myself that at least I tried and did something. You know, I'm so passionate about this at the moment.
Yeah, well, it's interesting you should say that, because I had a conversation with a friend of mine yesterday who is, doing a similar community project to Neighbourhood, but outdoor swimming as opposed to skateboarding. And she and I had gone for a swim. We were talking about this kind of like connection to yourself and your own body, and that reliance on ourselves to be the person that you need in your life. And she said something to me which struck home, and I can share that bit, and I will paraphrase slightly, but it was basically, if you have that strong connection to yourself, then who else do you need?
Exactly.
If you really, really dig deep into what that means and who you need to be for yourself. And a lot of people will find that difficult, and a lot of people will not be willing to go there because you have to go on a journey.
You do.
To get there. And I'm on that journey, but I'm certainly no expert. I deal with I deal with self-doubt all the time.
How boring would it be if you were perfect?
Well, yeah, this is the thing. And I think you have to kind of accept who you are and focus on who you'd like to be and what you'd like to do. And put that connection to yourself first before you worry about what other people are thinking or whether or not you should do something because of how that might look. And I have this real thing about ego and about, checking in with your ego at all times, because a lot of the time we can feel hurt or put down, upset about things. And if you check in with your ego and ask yourself the real reason why you're not happy about what somebody said or done or how somebody's acted or what somebody else might have achieved, if you can identify that is just your ego talking, that will help you process those feelings
brain.
a lot easier. Exactly. And being someone who was a skater and who competed in skateboarding and then who had a career working behind the scenes in skateboarding, I was really concerned with my ego for a long time. I was like, oh my God, what does this person think of me? What message am I putting out there? Oh man, like I need to look a certain way. I put so much pressure on myself. My ego was calling and I wanted to be liked and I wanted to be cool. And I was like, oh God, like this is how I succeed in this industry and as a skater. And yeah, once I let all of that go, I became so much happier because, again, like, it's just, why is that important? Why would you put yourself through that? I understand why I did. I understand why at certain times I can still feel a certain way in certain situations that I might feel uncomfortable in. But when you take a minute, step back, process, realize, hey, this is not a big deal. And that says more about that person's ego than it does mine. I'm okay.
Exactly.
And, if you have to shift your internal dialogue and have a little conversation with yourself, then that's okay too.
I have a lovely mantra. I say to myself when I feel my ego running away with itself, I'll say, Katie, you are not the center of the universe. And I'll just chuckle to myself. And then I'll realize as well that, okay, we've had 10 years of social media. I suppose we've been kind of, wired to think that the whole world is constantly watching us all the time. Nobody gives a shit about what I'm doing or what you're doing. They might tap in now and again and say, oh, wow, she's still doing that skateboarding club. Brill. And like maybe now and again, people tap in and see what I'm doing on Twitter. Oh, she's still doing Creative Boom. Ace. You're right. Let the ego go. And then I always like to remind myself of other people. You know how like you can build narratives in your head around other people, how they might have reacted. Oh, they saw you in the street and they didn't notice you. Me and the lovely Graham Jones were talking about this in a podcast earlier in the season about mental health. And you'll sort of say, oh, that person ignored me. What have I said? What have I done? And again, you just have to sort of just let it go and appreciate that you do not know what that person is going through. Because like we were saying earlier, if we're going to give ourselves a bit of a break, so to speak, then surely we've got to give everybody else a break too.
Definitely. And that's something that really hits home, and something that, rings true to me. And therapy really helped me as well, kind of come to that realization through working on my own mental health and relationships I had, whether friendships or romantic relationships of the past, coming to terms with the impact that they had on me, whether good or bad. And learning what, if anything, I needed to take away from that or leave at the door or just not even think about.
Yeah.
I was letting a lot of things hold a level of importance over me that in reality shouldn't have, shouldn't be holding that power over me. And when I was able to let that go, I was able to focus on other things which were bringing me so much joy.
More positive things.
Exactly. And being able to also share that with other people, which is something I found through Neighbourhood. And then as an extension of that, there are relationships that and friendships that I made through skateboarding in general, and being able to change not just how I hope other people would perceive skateboarders or skateboarding, but also how I perceived it, and the pressure I was putting on myself as well to conform in various different ways. And
so complex.
It really is. And I hope I hope that other people can experience that too, or have experienced that too, because it's really uplifting.
Mm-hmm.
And
it's stopping thinking as well, if you've had like lots of bad experiences, which we've brushed on.
Sure.
You're in danger of thinking that the world's out to get you as well.
I, for a long time, felt like the world was out to get me. I was going from, whether it was like a relationship or an experience in the workplace, but I kept having very negative experiences with men in my life. And that's part of the reason now why mentorship is so important to me, because I want to help create a safe space for people within my industry and my world that I didn't have back when I needed it. Mm-hmm. And I didn't know that I needed it at the time, of course. Yeah. However, that's something that I'm really passionate about now because of some of those experiences, to be able to try and say, well, I think and I hope that I can perhaps leave this better than I found it.
Yes.
Again, flooded with imposter syndrome, as oh God, am I the person to do this? Should I even step foot into this territory? But then realizing that it's something that I care about, and I want to help be a part of that shift and drive that change. And part of that is kind of realizing that you don't always need a qualification or a degree to give you the go ahead to do something. Mm-hmm. Anyone, anywhere can make positive change. And again, I can say that really easy, but I had to have a real serious word with myself to, say, no, you can do this and it's okay. Like, go ahead.
Yeah.
But when I think back to earlier in my career, where it felt like you could count the women in the UK action sports industry on one hand, I think I didn't really have any female mentors in that space to really look up to. Mm-hmm. Outside of the UK, there were amazing women doing amazing things with amazing brands, and I really found that inspirational. But it felt like it was they felt far away. And, mentorship feels like something that you can benefit from when you're in that close proximity, whether you have like a boss that you can learn from, or, a community organizer, or someone that you can look up to and go, okay, cool. Like, I can learn from this person, or, this is, I can take something away from the experiences I'm sharing with this person. And whilst I had amazing inspirational female role models in my personal life, be it my amazing mom or other family members or close friends, in the workplace, I felt like I was lacking that from leadership. And I didn't have that female boss to look up to in the workplace. And the bosses that I had were predominantly men. And, some of those people that I was supposed to learn from, or be in a safe space with, to be able to progress my own skills and career, I actually found that often I would find myself in dangerous situations or uncomfortable situations. And so that was difficult. And again, that's where the people pleasing came in. That's where you just, you stay quiet because you also are young and naive in that industry, and you don't have somebody else who's been through those things in the sense of like a female boss to step in. And
sometimes other women can be the problem though, can't they?
Well, there's
part of it.
There's that's something I'm again, why the mentorship side of things is really important to me, is because I really want to kind of do my bit to help kind of end this idea that female rivalry is a thing. There is enough room at the table for all of us. And so rather than like chipping at each other and bringing each other down, it's like, what can we do to build each other up?
Exactly.
And I've experienced that too, because again, there were only a couple of other women in this industry that I was working in. And so it felt like there were limited spaces for us. And so you would fight against each other to try and get what was considered the next seat, or the whatever the opportunity was. And it doesn't have to be like that.
It really doesn't. We can support each other.
Yeah, exactly. And I recognize and have experienced why we all might behave that way, because we're not given the same opportunities.
Yeah.
And so, it's again going back to this idea of having to change things from the inside out, because only then will we see true change. Representation is so important, not just from a sense of female diversity in the workplace, but just the wider sense of diversity and inclusivity. You need to change the stories on the inside to change what's happening on the outside. As a brand, you can put as many diverse athletes or ambassadors on your roster, but if your leadership team isn't diverse, then you're not going to really drive true change. So this is part of kind of the extended work that I care about, which ties into the stuff I'm doing with Neighbourhood, and also kind of carrying that through to my wider sense of what I feel I can help drive a change with and have a responsibility to help shift within our industry. And yeah, we are seeing change, but it's not coming soon enough. And, it needs to happen.
I think just telling a younger generation of women that they can speak up and that these things are not okay, and to sort of share our stories, how quiet and silent were so many of us before Sarah Everard, for example.
Yeah, that really hit home for me. And I remember when the Me Too movement came around, and I remember actually sitting at my desk of a place where I was being repeatedly sexually harassed, from comments to physical touch, to being forced to sleep in the same hotel room, and on one occasion the same bed as a male colleague on a work trip. And I realized when the Me Too movement came around, like, oh, damn, okay. Like it took me to hear other people's stories to recognize that what I was going through was problematic and dangerous for me. And that was really hard, because I didn't really, I had to come to the realization that was happening to me without having, I feel naive to say it, but I was naive at that time. I was in my early 20s, and
there's nothing wrong with thinking that the world's a good place.
I was being abused and didn't know how to identify what that was. And then being encouraged, I think, by many to just, accept that behavior. Like, oh, don't worry, they see you as one of the guys. That's a good thing. It's good that they can feel so comfortable with you that they would be that friendly. But no, that was humiliating. It was causing me to go home and cry. It was impacting so much so much of me as a person, that, it's only in retrospect that I can fully understand what impact that had on me fully. And then I carried that with me throughout my career and my life. But again, going back to mentorship, if I had had another female in the workplace at that time, I didn't. If I had had another female that I could have potentially spoken to, or who could have also or could have just been witness to some of what was happening as well, it might have made me more confident to, do something about it at the time. In this instance, I did. I spoke to the boss in charge and was told to go sit back down, essentially. And that's kind of heartbreaking. And again, like, this was a long time ago. This was as Me Too was happening, and as people were becoming a bit more aware of, like,
there was backlash though as well, wasn't there?
Well,
that was like
yes.
not as encouraging. You thought, oh gosh.
And again, I was like encouraged to be a lesser version of myself to cope with that.
Be quiet, little girl.
Yeah.
Good girls don't speak up.
That didn't work for me. And, I laugh about it because it's like, what else can I do? I have to draw what I can from those experiences. And again, I've had professional help to understand the impact of that situation and others. It got worse before it got better. It got a hell of a lot worse when I moved to London and worked more in like the fashion side of things. And,
right.
Went through hell and back before I realized, like, oh, okay, like, I think I get it now. This is not okay.
Do you think it might be a stupid question, but I ask it myself, when I'm just pondering these things. If I could go back with the confidence and the knowledge I have now, would I speak up? Would I say anything? And actually, you demonstrated there that you did speak up, but you were sort of...
I spoke up on 3 different occasions, not just
and
singularly.
Actually, I did as well.
Yeah.
And we were kind of told, oh, don't be silly. It was just not something, especially in the PR world 20 years ago, my goodness, even 10 years ago, it had serious problems. Even today, there
are still stories coming out of people going through things now. And like the normalization of it is awful, because it's like, horrible to say, but it doesn't always feel surprising.
No.
And it can feel really daunting to speak up. It can feel really daunting to ask for help. And, often how we have behaved in certain situations, we put that into question because we are looking to blame ourselves to help give reason to why this is happening to us. When quite frankly, like, it would be happening regardless of how you behaved or held yourself. But it can sometimes be easier to blame yourself, blame how you worded something, how you dressed, how you looked. But sometimes when faced with difficult situations, you don't know what to do, what to say, how to act. And again, if it is with a person in power and it's in the workplace, then you may say or act in a different way than you would if it was a person on the street, because we are told that is the boss and you must do what they say or, respect them. So it took me a while to be able to understand what that line is. And again, have the confidence to trust what I know, what I believe, what I stand for, and, not question that type of behavior. And that's probably why I have that no assholes policy now.
Love it.
Is because of some of those things. But, it's a major issue. And I'm laughing here again because I have done the work. But, I could just as easily cry, because there is a fine line between the emotional attachment I have to those lived experiences. Whether that be on my skateboard, getting hollered at, getting groped, getting followed home, or in an office situation, at an event, on a press trip.
The list goes on.
Yeah. It's a real thing.
It's a real thing. folks, and it's something we have to deal with even today. So you have definitely been on a journey, and it's wonderful to see you in such a strong, happy place, despite everything. And I hope you are proud of yourself, not just for everything you've accomplished, but for being the survivor and the fighter that you are, if I can boldly put it that way, because I do believe that you and I have had similar experiences, and I believe we are fighters and survivors, and I think we should be damn proud that we can sort of go out there and do really good things and help other people and laugh and live and love despite everything. So that's another one to add to your armour.
Thank you, Casey.
And I love that you have just recently done a short film, A Land for Everyone. I love this inclusive idea that we all belong in this world in any way or capacity that we feel happy with. And it's like, I feel like it's your kind of moment, your land for everyone. It's like sharing what you've learned, how far you've come, and then and trying to get other people to understand that they can have that too, if they're not in that place yet.
Thank you for saying that. A Land for Everyone is a project and a film that I have worked on with a very close friend of mine called Hannah. Hannah and I met at the top of an Austrian glacier.
Wow.
Very early in our careers when we were both working in the snowboarding side of the action sports industry.
Great.
And Hannah's also from Scotland, and everyone was always saying, "Oh, you're from Scotland, you must know Hannah." And I had to say, well, Scotland's quite a big place, actually. But again, we were two of only a handful of women from Scotland working in that world. So I also understand why people would make the assumption that we might know each other. Anyway, when we finally became friends, we realized that we too shared a lot in common, whether, it was how we felt and how we were treated and how we were dealt with in the skateboarding, snowboarding, outdoors world as two young girls starting out in their career, but also as skateboarders and snowboarders and outdoors people, and how we were viewed as skaters and snowboarders, as as well as people working in that world. And we kind of did a couple of little mini things together, little mini creative projects, and then kind of always said, we should do something else. Yeah. And we sat on that for 10 years. And just shy of a year ago, I was at home in Scotland visiting my parents, and Hannah came to visit me at my parents' for the day. And we were sharing ideas, experiences, all sorts, as we would normally do. And we'd gone for a skate in the freezing cold, by the way. It was like Baltic. But we were like, okay, it's dry at least. So let's go for a skate along this tarmac road in this little beach village that my parents live in, that, is kind of swallowed almost by the North Sea. And as we were skating along, I said, Hannah lives in Aviemore. And,
right,
in amongst all the mountains of the Cairngorms. And I said, we should go to the Highlands and we should do this trip. And that was the very kind of start of this kind of the development of this idea that we'd had 10 years ago to kind of do a project of this scale together. So A Land for Everyone was born in the small seaside village of Inverbervie. Brilliant. It was taken to the next stage of development. But A Land for Everyone, a land in skateboarding is to land a trick successfetly. Mm-hmm. And we have, to your point earlier, this kind of belief that this land is for everyone. Whether that be the landing of a trick or the land in the sense that it's Scotland, kind of a nod to Scotland's right to roam as well. Mm-hmm. But also the idea that skateboarding, sport, the outdoors is for everyone. We are passionate about opening up that space to make it more inclusive, accessible, and welcoming for people. So we brought on board our friend Rachel, who's an incredible filmmaker and a wonderful human. And the three of us went to Glentoran in the Highlands of Scotland.
Beautiful.
Tent, packed, sleeping bags packed, our skateboards packed, and off we went. And we went to the most remote part of Scotland we could find that we thought we could still skateboard in.
And safely camp.
And safely camp. I have never felt so safe camping than I do in Scotland. It just feels, when I'm in Scotland, I feel like this, I'm just so comfortable in myself when I'm in Scotland. I feel so true to who I am and what I stand for, and so connected to myself and to the people. And
Why are you in Leeds then?
We love Leeds too. So we moved from London. I started in Scotland, the northeast of Scotland. Aberdeenshire is where I grew up. I went to university in Miami, lived in New York for a couple of years, did my time between New York, LA, and Colorado skating and snowboarding. Brilliant. Then went to London, lived in London for however many, 5-6 years or something like that. And again, after the lockdown, after a year of neighborhood, my partner and I decided to move up north. So we're slowly but surely getting towards Scotland, but we're kind of in the middle ground between his family in London and my family in Scotland, and also a place that, feels like we have the best of all the worlds. Yeah. But Scotland just feels magical to me. So to be able to do this project with Hannah and with Rachel, and in this place that, it's a bit of a love letter to home, but also kind of a letter and a message, following this idea that like this is a space that's for everyone, and we welcome you, and this is being skating through and down the wild hills of the Scottish Highlands was an experience where, again, it was just so therapeutic and really an emotional journey, because if you can imagine, whilst we were filming that, we were talking about our experiences as skaters and as people who've worked in this world, this action sports world for, the best part of 10 years now. And what our shared mission was with this, and just in general. And so we went on a bit of a roller coaster of emotions. But it was truly one of the most amazing projects to have worked on, and to do that as kind of what, it was a passion project with friends. And we set off to do this adventure, and then thought, well, we should make a film out of this. The film was almost the second part to the idea. It wasn't like we set out to make a film. Yeah. We set out to go on a journey together. Hannah is a photographer and has taken amazing portraits of skateboarders, particularly women in skate. Mm-hmm. And so, she was passionate about showing what a female skateboarder would look like in the middle of nowhere, Scotland. And I, of course, as the skateboarder in this scenario, was passionate about being the skateboarder in the middle of nowhere, Scotland. And what we realized, which was really very interesting, was how we were treated by the locals and by the passersby and by the other people we met on the journey as skateboarders, which was so contrasting to how we are treated as female skaters in, for example, London, in varying different ways. So, for example, skateboarding is associated, people have this idea that like skateboarding is, that that skaters want to like cause harm or like wreck stuff. They're troublemakers. But then again, our experiences as female skaters is that we're also met with harassment when we're out skating. Right. So to have none of either of those things, and skate in these like beautiful, amazing locations, and only be treated with smiles and wows and oh my gosh, what are you guys doing here? Like, lovely. When we hiked out to one of Scotland's most remote bothies, a little hut basically in the middle of nowhere. Wow. It was like a 2 or 3 hour hike out to this bothy, and we arrived at almost midnight and stayed overnight there before hiking back. But on the journey where we were meeting people and we had our skateboards clipped to our backpacks and in the middle of like, nowhere, the wilderness, and people are just like, what's going on?
What are you doing?
So to be able to share our story with people in those situations too, really was like some of the most meaningful moments, beyond just the freedom that we felt to be like in that space. And so we made a film and we took some photos and we wrote a story all about it. And it went out there to the world about a month and a half ago. And we had, you know, it was a very personal piece. And so as you kind of can imagine with something like that, your expectations of it is that it's so personal that you assume no one else will really care too much about it.
Wow. Come on.
And so
I enjoyed it.
Thank you. And to be able to share that, we've shared it now. It was part of a couple of different film festivals and events, and has had a really wonderful response. That's been really overwhelming to share something so personal and then kind of talk about it outside of that kind of safe space. And so that's been a really rewarding and wonderful journey to go on with friends outside of everything else that I've been busy doing, to find the time and the space to dedicate to something that meant so much to us. I realized like how important those types of projects are and how much they do for the soul.
Oh my goodness, yes. And they make such a difference to everybody else who's watching it, and they're empowered and so on and so forth. It's like throwing a little pebble into a pond and seeing the ripple effect. So with all that in mind, do you feel like things are getting better?
Yes. There are more people riding skateboards now than ever before. More people are getting into that sport. There's more diversity in the outdoors and in the adventure space than I've ever experienced. But whilst that is all amazing and we welcome that, we have to keep going, and there's
still work to do.
Yeah, and I feel a huge sense of passion towards doing what I can and trying to encourage others within the space that already feel comfortable within the space to do what they can do to help drive that change. Like we said before, everyone can drive change. It's just about caring and about doing it. So yes, things are definitely changing, but we also, with that, there has to be an acknowledgement of the issues that exist as well. So that we can continue to see change at a deeper level that's rooted in all the right reasons. And at that point, you know, then it has to just keep going. That has to be the normal.
And then what would you say to yourself after having gone through all this? Like, this is the annoying thing, isn't it? It's the wonderful thing about getting older, but also the frustrating thing. Like, if you could go back and just say to yourself, for God's sake, Lynn, what would you say?
I think for me, it's like, I don't know if I have like a phrase or anything, but I would have just encouraged myself to find that connection to myself earlier, and to stop worrying about what people think of me, to do it for me rather than for anybody else. My experiences and everything that I have been through, or, you know, things that have all happened in a way that has led me to be able to be in the position that I am now. So, you know, sometimes you think like, would I change anything? Whilst I would definitely handle situations differently, you know, I think that it has all been part of my journey, and I ain't done yet.
Brilliant. So grab a skateboard or grab a basketball, go to your local park and see what happens.
Yeah, let's do it.
Well, thank you so much for your time, Lyndsay. I really loved hearing your story.
Thank you so much.
To discover more about Lyndsay McLaren, visit our show notes at creativebeam.com/podcast. That's where you can also hit subscribe and see our entire archive of episodes so far, including chats with Wes Anderson's graphic designer, Annie Atkins, LinkedIn senior designer, Harrison Wheeler, and artist Morag Myerscough. Next time, we'll chat with Meredith Schomburg, a Brooklyn-based illustrator who began her career as a graphic designer, but who has since changed course. Until then.